All right. Welcome everybody to our week 2 coaches hangout for Take Flight. If you're watching this later on, welcome. And we're always available via email, amanda.rondon@teamrwb.org and christy.sieben@teamrwb.org. So if you guys have any questions and you weren't able to join tonight, feel free to email those to us if you're watching this later. But okay, I think we're going to go over tonight some modifications, right, Christy, and a couple of other topics, and then we will probably stop the recording, and we're going to share as a small group how our practice is going so far and any issues we're running into or anything like that. So, all right, Christy, take it away.
Cool. Hey, gang. Welcome. So week 2, we've been working on just our warming sequence, and now this week we're going to be adding our strengthening sequence. So hopefully, as we've been practicing the warming sequence, kind of getting a chance to just practice tuning into our bodies and noticing how we feel. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about some modifications we can make, about ways that we can make the pose work for our body. So it doesn't matter what like the textbook says the pose is supposed to look like. There's no supposed to in yoga. It's how it feels in your body. So making modifications doesn't mean that we're not doing the pose. It means that we are doing the pose in the way that is the best way for us to do the pose. So sometimes, different joints have different areas that maybe aren't feeling the best. So like in our strengthening, we're going to be working on some maybe lunges. Always an option to bring the knee down if it's not feeling great, to have the leg up. So when you're in a lunge, the back leg can always keep the knee grounded on the floor if that feels better. Another option in our downward facing dog, even in our warming sequence, sometimes wrists don't like that. And so you can come down to the elbows in your downward facing dog, and that's called dolphin pose instead. It still is going to be really great to still open up through the back body, through bringing the tailbone up to the sky, but just having those elbows on the ground instead of those hands. Another option is to make some fists, and then just kind of be pushing your fists into the ground instead of your hands for downward facing dog. Also, with any pose, if you try different things like basically shortening the lever, putting the knee down on the ground, putting the elbows down on the ground, if it's still not feeling good, like if your shoulder's not feeling right in the day, then just skip the pose. No pose is ever required. All that's required is that you breathe. So let's see. So standing poses, some ways that maybe you can make a standing pose feel a little bit different would be when you're in like a warrior pose, you can lower yourself down a little bit. Sinking lower in the front leg is going to help up the intensity a little bit. So if that's what you're looking for out of the pose, you can dial it up a little bit. You can also lift the front heel when you're in a warrior pose, still keeping the knee and ankle in line, but basically just balancing on the ball of that foot on the front foot. That's going to definitely activate the calves a little bit more than having the entire foot grounded. If those options aren't feeling great, just stand up a little bit higher. You never have to sink super low in a warrior pose. Let's see. So having arms overhead sometimes doesn't feel the best in some poses. And so you can always just bring the arms out in front, or hands to heart center, or arms down by your sides, like mountain pose. Sometimes when we practice the same sequence over and over, shoulders especially start to get a little bit tender. So if arms overhead isn't feeling the best, just bring those hands on in. So let's see, talked about some of the standing poses, talked about some of the floor poses. Oh yeah, seated and hero pose. So I think I had posted this, someone had a question about that. So if being in hero pose, being sitting on your knees doesn't feel great, you can put a pillow underneath your bottom or a block or something like that to help basically increase the angle, so that instead of your knees being bent like this, your hips are just up a little bit higher, sitting on some cushions or bolsters. That can definitely help. Alternatively, you can just crisscross applesauce instead, or sit with your legs out in front. It's never, if it doesn't feel good to sit that way, then don't sit that way. So let's see. I think when we're in tabletop pose as well, same thing with like the hands, you can make fists. If your hands out doesn't feel good on the wrist, you can just make fists instead. Any questions on those, gang? Or Amanda, you want to jump in with any more?
I was just gonna say, often also there's like the set where you set your drishti in a pose. Particularly on some twisting poses, you might be looking like up. You would see traditionally people looking up towards their top thumb, but that can strain your neck and such. So if at any time your neck feels like it's being strained, then you're definitely not in alignment. So you can always bring your gaze like down to your bottom foot or whatever feels natural for you. I wouldn't take a twist into your neck and force yourself to be looking at something. That's not the intention of the practice. So I was just going to say that. And then in Shavasana, we don't have that in our sequence necessarily, but if you're doing recorded practices, I know sometimes it can bother people's lower back to lay flat with their legs out. So you can put your legs to the side with your feet down flat on the mat and just tense your knees in together, or take butterfly with a prop supporting your knees. You know, just whatever, like Christy's saying, like whatever feels best for you and feels right in your body. That's supposed to be like a deep relaxation pose. So you definitely don't want to be straining. If you notice that you're kind of like gritting your teeth for some reason, then you're tune into your body and figure out what's gonna work for you.
Also, an easy seat, like if you are sitting crisscross applesauce and if it's not feeling the best on your hips or your lower back, you can just grab a block or a small, like right now, I'm sitting on a small little pillow just to make it a little bit more comfortable, you know, just to increase that angle a little bit, to help open up those hips and whatnot. So yeah, lots of options.
Does anybody have any questions or find themselves wishing that they knew about either a modification to increase the intensity of a pose or decrease it in our sequence so far, or maybe in a practice that you're doing, like if you're doing an online video practice or something like that?
Is there do you have a thing that has the names of the poses? Because as I travel from the West Coast to East Coast, everybody calls the poses different names.
Yeah. And in different kind of yoga schools, sometimes people call them different things as well. For our power yoga practice, Joe, the Journey into Power sequence, I can post it's like a poster or whatever with stick figures of the different poses. I don't know, Christy, what resources you might, Christy and I probably call some of the same things different things. So like Warrior 3, I think.
Yeah, and yeah, there's so many different names. I feel like I've probably mixed them up too. So if you're watching recorded practices, it's like, wait, is this Airplane or Warrior 3 or what am I doing? It's kind of the same. I'll look and see if I can find a resource like that as well with like the pose names and yeah.
Thank you.
Some types of yoga will use the Sanskrit word for poses. In Baptiste yoga, we just call them English words, like the shape of the pose, for the most part. But it really depends on like where you're practicing and what the studio kind of subscribes to as well. Good question, Joe.
And the only other comment is, and this is not a question, but I really appreciate the gentle flow because it's a nice change from the power yoga that you do. So you get a big spectrum. So thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask if the gentle flow is going to be available in the evenings more often.
Yes, Monday evenings. Chris Oliver, where are you located, Sutra?
I'm Central Time.
Okay, Chris Oliver is in Alaska and she's teaching on Monday evening. It's like a beginner class, but it is a flow, but it's workshop-y. So if you ever have a question, she's welcoming questions right in the middle of practice. So if you're in a pose and you're like, oh, this feels weird, am I doing this right or whatever, you can ask them. So that's one option. And we can explore we have some other folks lined up that are interested in teaching. So if they have availability in the evening, we can get that going probably.
Yeah, that'd be great because I know a lot of times those tend to be like, you know, there's a lot of power ones And I know a lot of, well, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I know that there are several veterans that I frequent around that are recovering from injuries. And so a lot of the power yoga is very difficult for some of us. So the one that we do right after this is a good one, but then there's the one that's kind of in between tonight and then the one, the power stuff it's just perfect. So love to see a little bit more of that, but in the evening time instead of early in the morning, because it's real difficult for the mountain and central people. So
Sure, great. That's good feedback as we're looking into like February and creating next calendar that we'll move through the rest of the year on. So the class on Monday and Friday, the ones that I teach are power yoga. The Friday is more of like a flow, but it's not quite the same as what Christy's doing on Saturdays and Thursday.
Wednesday, it's a 30-minute flow, but yeah, the Saturday is a gentle, and maybe we can look into recording some more of those for you guys as well, just to get on the channel so that you don't have, so that you have those options for when it works for you to fit in your schedule.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be really awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Questions about modifications or practice in general? All right. All right, so we're going to do breakout groups, but I'm just going to end the recording now so that we can have time together here. We're going to share some feedback on what we've learned from our practice so far. Nobody's going to put on the hot seat. It's going to be, your option to share. So, but if you're joining us via video, thanks for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you either in a live class or on the app. Just a reminder that our live classes can be found under the Eagle Nation Live tag. So if you have challenge highlighted, you might not see them in the app. So unclick challenge and stay on the virtual tab and you'll find those classes there. So we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.